showed me what. Instead of asking why, start asking why not. Time flies when you're having fun. Time flies when you're lying in the sun. Bit by bit, the older that we get, the faster it tick, 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 ticks. Time flies. Whoa, whoa, time flies.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Marshfield Old School Times. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. We certainly did. Got plenty to eat. And then I was off last Saturday. We took a little trip with the family, Melanie and the boys and I, and had a great time. So we're back today with Tom Farr again. Tom, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate you coming back the second trip. So much information that Tom shared with us 2 weeks ago, and we just wanted to be able to pick his brain a little bit more. He's really a true gem here for Marshfield in history, and we want to take advantage of that, quite frankly, and just help. He can help us recall how things maybe used to be in some areas. And so today we're going to pick up a little bit, kind of where we left off. First of all, thank Dennis Beck for our theme song. Thank Logan Fraker, our producer over here behind the camera. Appreciate the help to be able to put this show on. So Tom, I think when we left you and we were talking about you and Ivina just kind of starting to get together. Why don't you tell us, let's start with that. How did you and Ivina meet, and kind of start with that part of your life?
Well, you know, the nine kids hang out in the sweet shop a lot.
Uh-huh.
And she had dated some of my friends, and so we kind of had a date. It didn't work very well, and we didn't go back. So later on, the next time we went out again, it clicked.
It clicked.
It clicked, and so that was in 52, and so just never looked back.
Yeah, and you started at the post office in 49.
49.
And you were, just to refresh our memories, and you were in the service when...
I got out in August and started the post office in October.
So you graduated in 48, 1 year in the service, that summer to the following summer.
Yeah.
And then and then you went to work at the post office, and then met her just another couple years.
I was working for my dad and on commission, and there wasn't much commission on sweeping floors and stuff. And so I heard that there was an opening at the post office, and I applied, got accepted.
Uh-huh.
It was just a temporary. I was to go do there till Christmas, then I'd be done.
Yeah.
And they paid $1.29 an hour. That was more than I was getting at Dad's.
Yeah.
And so I worked till Christmas. I went in and asked the postmaster. I said, "Well, I guess I'm done." He said, "No, we got some more work. Just keep coming back until we tell you not to." And they didn't tell me, and I stayed 35 years. 35 years.
You know, really $1.29 in 1951 or 1949 was really good money.
Oh, yeah.
I started my first job in 1974 carrying out groceries at MFA. I was 14 for $1 an hour in 74. So
I carried out groceries at Joe Letterman's on the south side of the square for 15 cents an hour when I was a sophomore.
Yeah, which wouldn't have been that many years prior to that. So that was really good money.
Yeah.
Now, where was Joe Letterman's store at?
It's where the AG Edwards is now.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and right beside it was Herb Ellis's bicycle and lawnmower shop. Thompson Furniture.
I can remember that row of buildings.
Yeah.
The furniture store, of course. Yeah. They put the grocery store where Craig Bell's office is probably has a different front than it did then, I'm sure.
I think so.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Speaking of the post office, let's go back for just a minute. So the post office, when you started, was located
next door, first door south of the Rathman building.
Which happens to be a building that I have today. The Retro Zone Arcade was located there the last 5 years till we just moved it. And then it had been a flea market. John Dale Evans had a market in there at one time, and various folks. But for a long time, many of us growing up in the 60s and 70s knew it as the Davison Shoe Store building.
Yeah.
So kind of let's go back
Okay.
a little bit and talk about that
Okay,
arrangement.
the old building
Mhm.
had uh, was a long, slim building.
20 feet by 90 feet. I know the size of it.
Okay, and the had a big old potbelly coal stove in the middle, and the carriers in the back, and the postmaster and the clerks in the front were freezing to death, and us clerks sorting the mail in the middle. We were dying. Harold Colby was the janitor, and he come in and fire that thing up, and it'd get cherry red,
Uh-huh.
and that it had one big old skylight in the middle, and it leaked like the dickens, and our floor sagged, and we had a lot of water standing on the floor, and the janitor was complaining about how am I going to sweep all this, get all this out. I went down the street to Drumride's Hardware, and they loaned me a bracing bit, and I came back to drill holes in the floor and water. And then Mr. Davis bought that building when he bought his shoe store. Well, he wanted to remodel his shoe store, and so he couldn't do it. I mean, the wall between it, he had to do both buildings at the same time.
The shoe store was just south of that,
Yes, next to us.
which would be where the quilt shop is today. The
Yeah.
sanitary barber shop was in there for many
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
And our flagpole was up in front of the post office, and every once in a while, get all tied up, and I'd have to go up to Dr. C.R. McDonald's office, climb out on our roof, straighten out the flag, and
Yeah.
go back through his office.
In the Rathbun building.
Yeah,
So that building, had a wood floor, had, like you said, a terrible roof, but the walls are the same walls that are there now. Way I understand it, is that right, Mr.?
I don't know. All I know is we
Yeah.
remodeled, and
Yeah.
we had good floor and a good roof and
Yeah.
a good heating system, and
So he actually remodeled it while the post office was still
yeah,
in there.
And so we had to do something, and it was only place available was the Marshfield Milling Company. So we moved the post office down to the mill. We spent all the winter there.
The mill where it is today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the postmaster's office was in the egg cooler. And we didn't have little doors that the carriers could go in and out. We had big garage type doors back there, and every time they loaded up, we like to froze, in the winter time.
Uh-huh.
And then Mr. Davis got the building done. We moved back there with completely new equipment, new tables, new cases, everything new.
So this would have been the early 50s.
Yeah.
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 So speaking of the mill, it brought back a memory for me a few weeks ago when I had Pat Abbott on here. Her father, Mr. Lane,
Yeah.
had a produce market in that mill office building that's
Yeah.
still there. That you talked about the post office
But
used
it
for a
was
while.
empty when we moved in and out of it.
Sure. Well, that's really interesting. So Mr. Davis remodeled that building, put a concrete floor in it, put the new front on it, made it nice, which is like it is today. But then he still remained on the south side next to it in the shoe store until you all got the new federal building built. So tell us about that.
The process started for there, and my understanding, and I can't remember
Sure.
for sure, but I think there was going to be a lease deal, and so Davis wanted his building, and so we moved over on the north side of the square. I think maybe Judge Replocal's office was
Yes.
in there.
Yeah. There was actually 3 buildings kind of built together there.
Yeah, those 3 were the indentation. That was my understanding, that was to be the new lobby of the new Ritz Theater, but because of TV, they didn't build it.
Didn't go on with that.
No.
And that would be right next door to the driver's license office there
Yes.
now, that set of
Yeah,
buildings.
Okay. And I said a while ago, in the basement, the rural carriers, and we're down in the basement, and it had beams in there that were just 6 foot, and we had some 6'1" carriers, and every once in a while you hear a little profanity come out of the basement.
Was Jim Trantham a carrier yet?
Yeah.
He would have been one over 6 foot, that's for sure.
Yeah, Had Haley, Phil Shook, Patty Cantrell.
Well, so you moved into the new federal building, and then of course now again backing up back over on Crittenden Street, the Marshfield Mail was a couple of doors to the south.
Yeah.
and then the Drumright Hardware was in there, and
Yeah.
and then the shoe store, and then you guys, and then after you moved, the shoe store moved into that building,
My understanding, he just put a
put a
door
doorway,
between
and had them both.
and then had both.
Had
of
them both. Okay. Well, by the time the '60s rolled around and I was a kid, he was just in the north building,
Yeah.
and the south building became the sanitary barber shop. And
Oh, the sanitary barbershop was there long before Mr. Davis was. I got my first haircut there.
okay, well, I thought it was in the building next. I guess
don't-
there was another little building
I
there.
don't-
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, I know that. Well, I'm just trying to recall.
Yeah, right.
No, you're right. It was on the south side of that building, and then
Yeah.
the north side of it was probably his shoe store. Okay,
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah. Well, it's good to kind of think about how Marshfield used to be. That's part of what we want to do here. And so, since we're sort of on that subject, any other memories around the square? I know we've talked about, you know, you had the car dealership, I guess, over on the northeast side of the north,
north
yeah,
half of the east side.
Pierce's.
Well, they're on the corner of Crittenton and Marsh. No,
Jefferson,
no, Jefferson on the north side.
yeah, Madison,
Madison.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
That block where the theater was. There
Yeah.
was Burley Hudgens had a grocery store there,
okay,
and he had a front door that you got groceries out of. The back door was his liquor store.
that's where the photography store
Yeah,
was
yeah.
for a long time. It's been vacant for a
Yeah,
while.
then-
Okay,
Then there's
that became Hobson's Market later.
yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah. And then the next was a pool hall. Glenn Smith had a pool hall there, and Pappy Spriggs
mm-hmm,
had the pool hall. And then Clarence Dotson, no, Peel Phelan had a grocery store next.
yeah, yeah.
And he ended up, Clarence Dotson bought that out.
Rosie Phelan still owns that building.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've talked to her the other day.
Yeah. And of course, then the theater, and then
Gas station on the
the
corner.
gas station on the corner. And that was,
Well, Charles Brooks owned it and the theater building,
yeah.
but I don't know. Gene and Noel didn't buy it until what, early
Yeah.
50s.
Yeah. Anyway, Bob Florence.
Bob Florence. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I had it. So
And then then going on west, you had, like you mentioned, the
the grocery store.
grocery store
And
where you worked.
and then Ellis or Herb Ellis had a lawnmower. Of course, back then there was no gas lawnmowers. There was all the old reels.
Mhm.
Well, he had a business sharpening those things. He had a machine set up. Had a machine that's put it up there, and it would grind. And I understand they still have one out the golf course now.
Okay.
But anyway, he would, and then he had bicycle repairs,
Sure.
and parts and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Thompson's grocery or
Furniture store.
So, yeah.
And that building, which was tore down years ago, I remember it, and then
Yeah.
tore it down. Now there's a vacant lot on the corner, but then they built that new little brick building where Sheila's is now,
Yeah.
which I think was built there first for a chicken place, cashew chicken place or something.
Chinese place.
Chinese, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, good Chinese.
yeah, yeah. And then of course around the corner, you had the Brooks Furniture on the corner back
Right,
all the
yes.
way down through there, and
Yeah. And then Marshall Auto Store was where Smokey's
mhm.
barbecue was, or pizza was.
And we had Eric Burke on here a few weeks ago, and I think Carl, his dad, ran that
Yeah.
before the Singers bought that
Yeah.
from, I guess, from them.
Mr. Steffens put it in, started it.
Okay.
Tips, and he had a son, Tip, that married Pat Vanice.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ernest's daughter.
yeah. And then the next
And
building.
that building had been a funeral home years ago, McMahon Funeral Home,
Well,
funeral service or something, wasn't it?
I'm not sure it was ever a funeral home, but it was owned by Mr. McMahon,
Okay.
and he had the funeral home. Well,
Oh, I see.
he had a body that legally he couldn't bury. He kept her upstairs.
Yeah, that's the
There.
story. Okay.
Yeah,
And it was there for a long time.
long time until finally the county court they found some way that they could.
Bury it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that story's that's a legendary story that's been going around forever.
yeah.
Okay, was that building also then prior to the auto parts? Was it some kind of a photography place at one time?
I don't remember it being that.
Okay, that might have even been before your time, because I understand there was one over there somewhere. Like my grandparents were married in 1921,
Yeah.
and it was taking at a photography studio on the square, and I've always understood it was that building, maybe upstairs or something.
Yeah. Well, see, there was, of course, there is an upstairs
Yeah.
to it, but
Oh,
anyway, that building. Then there was another building there, and then the D.D. Hamlin Abstract, and then the bank.
Then the bank,
and then there was a building on the
corner.
that had everything in the world in it, from TV store to pool hall. That was the first pool hall there.
Was it?
In Marshfield.
Yeah. I remember it too. It was a dollar stretcher when I was a kid. It had a wood floor. It still had the old, kind of the old frown on it and everything. And then on the next wing, you had the Hobson, or the Hosmer building, right?
Yes. And there was a newspaper office there. It didn't last. Well, it was there for years, and I can't remember what the name of it was. It wasn't a Marshfield Mail. It was a different.
Yeah.
And it was the Democrat paper.
Sure. Well, there was, every town had several papers
absolutely.
over the years.
And then
there was a Marshfield Chronicles at one time, but that may have been that may have been it.
I think that was it. And then there was apartments above that building.
Yes.
And then there was a Miss Smith had a dress. No, Mrs. Watterson had a dress shop next, and there was one little piece in there that Ballard Waters' sister Mabel had a newsstand in there. You buy magazines, newspapers, and then there's the dress shop, and then I think there's one more, but then there was
Muzzy's Cafe. That was still in business in the 60s.
Yeah. And then the
Cleaners on the corner. Yeah. Now, the Cleaners building, way back there originally, was it Mr. Foster's office or Mr. There's a vault in there.
Yeah.
It was, and I think John Thompson, who owns the building now, could tell us the history of it. But I think he loaned money out or something. Another interesting story I'm going to throw in while we're on that part of the square. So Mr. Hosmer, that would be.
Oh yeah, I forgot Mr. Hosmer. He was the second place down.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he owned that corner, that big building with the upstairs.
Yeah.
And my dad has told the story that my granddad borrowed a little money from him this was during the Depression.
Yeah. And
the banks weren't loaning any money, and he needed a little money for the farm or something, and he borrowed it. People would go to Mr. Hosmer, and he would loan them money, and had a system. Everything was above board and all that. But Dad can remember. He said, I was just a little boy, and he was the first. It was the first building that he had ever seen fluorescent lights. And he went up there, and he said, went into his office, and the lights were bright, and just, Dad said it was just an attraction, it was something new. And he said Mr. Hosmer, who I understand was just not the friendliest old man.
Oh, no.
But but he looked at my dad and he said, "What's wrong, you little brat? Can't you see?" And of course, Dad, and Grandpa couldn't say anything because he owed him money, But I mean, everybody knew how he was. But he was a good man because he helped people and loaned them money and so forth. And of course, we love his grandkids. The Hosmer family. They're a great family, and Mrs. Hosmer. We want to have them on some of these days too. But I just can remember that story with the fluorescent lighting.
Yeah. And Mrs. Hosmer had a very low voice, and she'd call the garage. I'd say, "Yes, sir." Oh.
Yeah.
She informed me she was not a sir.
Yeah. So then the post office was built where the old jail was.
Yes.
And on the corner, obviously.
Yeah.
And now, I'd always heard that lot there, the jail was on the corner, but the lot was vacant and so forth, and that's where they would set up the carnival for the 4th of July and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
After they tore the old jail out, before we got the post office there.
Okay.
Yeah. And there would be tents and their revival meetings.
I was getting ready to say, I've got a picture, and I'm going to find that and show that. It's really neat, of a tent revival meeting.
Yeah.
And
I can't think what the guy's name.
He was a big guy,
Oh,
right?
big, yes.
He would come in here every year or every fall or whatever and have those.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad attended many of those.
Yeah.
And I think that went on up.
I think he had some ties to Elkland.
Okay.
I think his wife was local.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll find that picture, and then you'll probably pick some of those people out. There's some people that you can pick out in there.
Yeah.
And then they also had gospel singings down at the fairgrounds in the cattle barn.
Yeah.
Show barn. I've got a picture of my grandpa and mom and dad singing.
Our house was right across the street, basically, from the courthouse.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the jailhouse.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot is. And one night, Mother and I were sitting on the front steps. And Mom said, "Look over there." And there was a guy dropped a string out the upstairs jail window. Somebody ran over there and tied a fifth to it, and they pulled it back.
Yeah. Some things never change, right?
Never change,
That's right.
no.
That's right. Well, and then of course the north side of the square coming on around, the hardware store on the corner.
Yes, hardware store, 2 different hardware stores. Frank Day had a grocery store where the sweet shop was, and he moved it over to that end building
Okay.
for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I know Mary Spriggs, Carol Spriggs' mother, worked in there.
Okay.
And then in the back of it, it changed. There was a Statler's plumbing and heating. And in the back of that building, and T-Boo George had a feed store back there.
Which there's kind of a rock building. There's still a dock kind of back there, I think. Mm-hmm.
And Frank and Loyal Davis had a cabinet shop in there.
Okay.
And then Dave Roper bought it, or some made a ring, and they cut a hole from the back of his store so he'd have a loading dock.
Yeah. And Roper's was next door. Of course, that was a big store in the day, wasn't it?
And the Roper's, the old store on the corner.
Yeah.
And then Roper store, and then Nell Terry had a woman's clothing store and dry goods, had patterns and materials, and
that was before Birchfield's had the appliance.
yeah, and
5J.
yeah, and then it ended up Roper. No,
We had Roper's, and then you had the
but Roper's bought the building beside him, cut a hole in the wall, and then the 5J, I think.
okay.
Yeah,
There may have been, yeah.
and then
And the lodge was above 5J.
yes,
Masonic Lodge.
yeah, no,
Or no, Oddfellows Lodge.
Oddfellows. And then, of course, on the corner was originally was a Jeff B. James jewelry store, and then Missouri Electric
Mm-hmm.
was in there, and which later converted to Show Me.
Show me, yeah. Before they tore it down and built the bank
Yeah,
in the early 60s and moved it. So 5J was originally owned by Calvin Birchfield, right?
yes.
And then John Bill, he sold it to John Bill Greer.
When Ivana and I got married, we church. Calvin come over. He went to the Lutheran church too.
Uh-huh.
We was talking about getting married. We knew we started a house, and he come over and says, "Kids, come up to the store tomorrow, and pick out what you need, and pay me when you want to."
Oh, yeah.
Took us a while, but we
Sure.
But it was never a set amount, and never got a bill.
There was a lot of that in those days that went
Oh,
on.
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
bet there was.
Yeah.
People helped each other, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So coming on around the square now, that block of buildings wasn't there, right? It was or part of it might have been. You tell me. Where the license bureau is on through there.
Oh, the license bureau building was there, and that was it.
That was all.
Yeah, there's 3 big highway billboards
Mm-hmm.
in there, and those old buildings had burnt and they were brick and they'd fallen in, and then the trees growing up in it, and
That's where you said 2 weeks ago that your boys would you'd go back there and hide and
BB,
all kinds of stuff, shoot BB guns and
yeah. Well, the drunks would leave their bottles in there, and we had good targets.
yeah. The billboards were there I know in the Centennial pictures, you can see the billboards there. So coming around, then you had the Robertson Hardware Building.
Yes, and that was Tyndall and Jackson.
Tyndall Jackson.
And then the next over, a Dugan. No, she was a Dugan. They had a bakery there. You go there and buy fresh bread.
Next to the hardware store?
Yeah, yeah. And then Ford garage and stuff there.
Yeah.
And then going up to Calvin's. I think Mrs. Nell Terry moved from next door to Roper's over where Calvin was.
Okay.
Had a little store in there for a while, and then the Tenla Jackson building.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And then finally the east side that we've talked about a little bit last week with the sweet shop and all that, but you had Shields and Beckerdites, I guess, or they weren't there yet.
Yes.
They were there.
Well,
they came in.
They came in early, right after the war.
Which
I think they had a little store down next to where Shorty's Cafe was first. That's where they started, and then they moved in there.
on East Washington.
And I wouldn't bet on that, but I think I remember that right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then I know Pat Abbott opened her store in 1950, the Style Shop, in the building there that's now, I guess, the north part of Ruth.
Before that, it was George Barnes Cafe, and then Skeeter Hart's Cafe, and then they got it.
Yeah. Well, I want to move a little bit beyond the square now, Tom. I think, first of all, we're going to talk about AFS because I know that's been really important to you and Ivina. But let's back up and talk a little bit about Ivina and your daughter Leslie. So you got married in 51?
53.
53, okay.
Yeah.
Well, and tell us a little bit about all that. You met her, you dated, you got married, and
we decided we're not coming home from the movie in Springfield. We decided to get married, and we went and looked at houses, and we decided that we couldn't build a house and pay rent at the same time. So Dad said, "Well, I've got a lot. I'll give you the lot." He took it in on a car, and it didn't work out very well. And so I got another one from Lee Cass, the banker.
Yeah.
I bought back half of his place.
Uh-huh.
And we built the house there in 1953. Got married in September then.
Uh-huh.
And your Uncle Bill was my carpenter. He built my house. First house he ever built, I think.
Uncle Bill.
Farr.
Bill Farr, yeah. Yeah, my great uncle, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be darned, huh?
Yeah, we...
well, he had some good brother-in-laws that could have helped him if he needed help with it.
Yeah.
That all knew how to build.
So...
Bread roast and...
Yeah.
Here's you some water.
Okay. He...
Now, was that the house you're still in today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
And all he had was an old Sears and Roebuck table saw and a skill saw and his hand saws and his planes. And he built my kitchen cabinets and all the stuff in there.
By hand?
By hand.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are they still the originals?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Been refinished one time in 70 years.
Goodness gracious.
You have to come look at them.
Yeah, you know what? I'd like to, because you don't find very many homes I know the condition yours is in, that would be 70-year-old that is still that original. Most of them would have had the cabinets pulled out and replaced, and with probably new type cheap cabinets and everything else.
Well, we did replace the countertop.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. That's the same year that Fred and Irene, my grandparents, Fraker, built their house, which is now the Dennis Insurance Office out on the old, that was 53.
So we had Leslie in 55, and then we had Kevin in 60, and he had cerebral palsy real bad, and he lived 16 days.
16 days,
and so we decided Leslie was enough.
Yeah.
And she was deprived of siblings, but still, it worked. So and then we got into we got her some siblings from the other country.
That's right. Yeah, and we'll talk about that. So, growing up, Leslie grew up there on St. Charles, and you guys, I know you had, you guys were wonderful parents. Of course, your wife and my mother were in a club together.
Yeah, Samad Club.
Yeah, tell them what Samad stands for.
Well, the some kind of federated women's club,
right?
Come and started them.
Yeah.
And then they told them that they had to. We may have discussed this last time. I don't know, but they told them they had to have officers and agendas for their meetings and
Right.
all this stuff, and they said no.
Yeah.
And so they called it the Samad. That's backward for dames.
Names.
And
I've always thought that was
okay.
so funny.
Leslie was born in 55.
Uh-huh.
When she was about started the school, that's when they started that. So they started it in 1960, and it's still going. There, I think they had like 20 some, and now they're down to 8.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, my brother's was born in 55, and there was a whole bunch of them. Doug Andrews, and a bunch of kids that were in.
Yeah.
Some of us were just a little younger, but
yeah, Mike and Leslie were the same class at
yes,
school.
yes, that's right, that's right.
Then when Leslie got up in school, the AFS program came in quite strong.
Yeah,
and we were really intrigued with that. And
now she graduated in 73.
Yes.
And AFS probably started in the late 60s, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and move into that AFS part.
And so we thought we wanted to do that, but we weren't really sure. And the county agent's office had another program called International Student Exchange, but their kids only came for 10 weeks. So we thought, well, it was bad. 10 weeks would be better than a year. So
was that you say the county agent, was that the Missouri Extension Center? Okay.
Yeah. So we signed up that and got a girl from San Diego, Chile, Pamela Cortez. It's now Pamela Cortez Bean. And we had so much fun and liked us so well. Before she left, we signed up for an exchange for an AFS kid. And then we got Salvador Lagden from Legazpi City, Philippines.
And I remember her.
And
that was Leslie's senior year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then in 75, she went home in 73. In 75, we moved a kid, had a kid, and I took him home. I was president of the chapter, and I took him home that night, and I don't know where Ivina said it, or I said it first. One of us says, let's just keep him. So he was John Stubrud from Norway. And so we had another great year with him.
Yeah.
And while he was here, I'd been working quite a bit with AFS, and they came to us from New York and asked us if we would be the representative for the AFS program in southern Missouri. And our territory is from Bolivar, Lebanon, to the Arkansas line, and from Thayer to Monette, including Springfield and everything. And so we would pick up every one of our students. We had to go and inspect the homes.
Oh.
And then we'd pick them up and bring them to our house for a weekend. And
give them a break, give the parents a break or something.
We could find out what was going on.
Oh, I see.
We had one situation that was really bad, and we went down to check on her, and she just broke down. She was having a really bad. They wanted a maid instead of an exchange student.
Oh, wow.
So anyway,
that was kind of a big job. I mean, that a lot of responsibility to that, wasn't there? I mean,
so Ivina said, would you like to leave here? And she said, yes. So we talked it over. We told her, I said, pack your bags, everything you want to take with you, because you're never coming back here.
Yeah.
And I went out and told the host mother, and I told them that when we get back, I'm going to recommend that school never get another student.
Yeah.
And because the kids bullied her.
Wow.
Teased her, a lot of things, and the mother was a school librarian, did nothing about it.
Did nothing. Wow.
So
that's
anyway,
bad. Yeah.
Anyway, that girl, we brought her home, got her a nice home in Springfield. Mega, she wasn't very stylish and stuff.
Sure.
These had 2 girls there, and they took her to the beauty shop, got her hair done, bought her some new clothes. Totally different kid. Just wonderful.
Made her more secure, probably. I mean,
Yeah.
with
And
herself
then-
and everything.
Then when we were AFS students, we were district reps, we got a call from New York City and asked if we would go to St. Louis for a 3-day seminar. And they came down with all the papers for every student that was coming to Missouri. And then they had another stack over here of all the parents that had been accepted. So we worked on the team to pick this kid out and match it to that.
Wow.
And so
That's a big
and
responsibility.
that was the year that Jack Waters was getting a girl and my
Uh-huh.
brother was getting a girl.
Okay.
So I picked out lanes and Ivy picked out Jack Waters. So that was
2 here that year.
that was Beth Briggs. They ended up marrying Ted Hamlin.
Ted Hamlin, yeah. Beth Hamlin, yeah.
And
yeah.
then this Renato that was at Williams, she ended up marrying a boy here, and I can't remember what his name was. So when we picked girls, we picked them to stay.
Well, that's great. That is great.
And then while I was district, I got a call from New York, and they said, we've got a new experimental thing that we're not sure about, but we've been approached by the Polish government to exchange teachers, English teachers. You send an English teacher to Poland, we send an English teacher to the United States
Mm-hmm.
for 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And said, we think Marshfield is the place for it.
Hmm.
And so I went and saw, I think it was Joe Barr. And, okay, so we got a lady from Poland named Jadwiga Dumbrowski.
Boy, you did that well.
And
This was what, in the early 80s by then, probably?
yeah, I think so.
Something.
And she stayed at Hosmer's.
Okay.
And Hosmer had a boy from coastal Thailand.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, the one thing I remember about her is we had a thing to introduce her to and we had a cover dish dinner.
Mm-hmm.
She went wild about that. She said, that's the one thing of all my trip I'm going to take back to Poland and teach them how to do cover dish dinner.
I'll be darned. Huh. Ain't that funny?
So AFS has really been good to us.
Yes, yes.
As a matter of fact, I got a text from Manila about an hour and a half after I did the program 2 years ago.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
You've remained in touch with her all the
Oh yeah,
years.
we video chat regular, and
Yeah.
also with the boys from Norway
Yeah.
and the girl from Chile lives in Los Angeles. But we're on the phone.
Wow. When was now Salve's been back over here, right?
One time.
One time. Yeah.
Yeah, but now the girl from Chile's been to our house 3 or 4 times since.
Since
Since
then.
then,
Wow. That's really neat.
Yeah,
Well, I tell you,
and we went to Norway for 3 weeks and stayed with the family over there.
you did.
And then his folks came to our state a couple of weeks.
That's quite a mission that you've accomplished with that. I mean,
We've
it
had-
really is.
It's really been great. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And
Of course that Poland situation would have been still while they were behind the Iron Curtain. I mean, if it was before, 88 or 80 whatever, when Poland,
I don't remember that.
I bet it would have. I bet it would have been. There's a couple things that I wanted to mention that a couple of people had mentioned to me, and so I kind of got to commit to my audience, Carla Ahrens, Carla Davis
yes,
Ahrens, a good friend, and went to school with Carla. Her and Steve are a year ahead of me in school, but Carla, she sent me a message and wanted to make sure that you could talk about her dad, Carl Davis.
Well, Carl came back from the service
Uh-huh.
in 46. I think he started back to high school, and maybe 45. I don't know. Anyway, when I was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
Carl was 4 or 5 years, 6 years older than me, because like I said, he'd been in the Army all
Mm-hmm.
World War II, and so the lady come to my mother and said, I saw your son in a place he shouldn't have been. And
You mentioned that you guys favored each other. You're both kind of
we
short.
looked a lot
Yeah,
alike.
yeah.
Most people, when he worked for Chevrolet Garage,
Uh-huh.
the car salesman, they'd come to me and say something about it, you know.
Yeah.
And but anyway, my mother said no, he was home last night. He wasn't up there. So I said, well, that was Carl Davis. So I used poor old Carl for an excuse to get out. and, and
But I'm sure you would have never been anywhere that you shouldn't have been, though. I mean, probably no.
no.
But if you by chance did, you could
Yeah.
always say, "Well, that was Carl, it wasn't
That's
me."
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny. That's
And
great.
Carl knew about it.
Yeah,
I mean,
he may have done the same thing with you.
I never did hear him say he did, but I would have passed him. We were good friends.
Well, that story obviously got to Carla and his daughters because she went, and then she said there was another little story about her daughter Libby when she was a little girl.
Well, when I carried mail, I bought bubble gum and candy by the case,
Uh-huh.
and every day the kids would meet me. And Susie Davis had a bunch of kids staying there, and every morning when I come around, they'd all be out in the yard waiting for me for candy. And they kind of rushed around the car, and I had the deal. There was a line, and if they got their toes, one of them got their toes in front of nobody got candy. I mean, they were lined up better than any GIs ever lined up. And so this went on for 2 or 3 years, a couple of years at least. And I started to drive off, and I looked up, and I could see about this much of a head right in my grill.
Mm.
And a kid that wasn't even part of this would come down. He'd heard about the candy.
Neighbor kid.
So anyway, that ended that.
Yeah.
I quit that.
Yeah. Well, that's somebody was looking out for you there, obviously, but. Also, had another guy asked me to ask you, or if it was true, or he knew it was true, but I understand maybe you were one of the first or the first person to get a white-tailed deer after it became part of the conservation program. Tell us about that.
Well, I got interested in bow hunting,
and you might rehash it for those that didn't hear last week. You were part of the sportsman club in school, and you might kind of just touch on that a minute too.
Well,
because some might not have heard that.
Mr. Mooney started a club in school, and we ended up every year March 1st in Bennett Springs. We go down the night before and stay all night. And he took us one time a week on the Gasconade. We camped out just on the bank. And we went coon hunting, duck hunting. I mean, we were just a really good program. And so anyway, I've always, of course, Dad hunted all the time, but I was hunting. But anyway, I got interested in bow hunting, and so we started. My brother and I, we got started bow hunting, and we, before we had seasons here, we even went to Texas County and tried it. It was a day out. But anyway.
So they actually had a season down there before they did here?
Yes.
I see.
Yeah. And so finally they opened up Webster County for bucks only, archery only. And I went a couple of years and almost got some shot. I never got a shot. Well, one day, Wayne, my brother, and Popeye Andrews, and a Wayne Masterson was going to go. It's where I think it's on land that Cunningham owns now.
Up Northview.
Yeah. And so the four of us went up there, and these guys said they wanted to make a drive. Well, I'm not good enough driver, and so I said, well, I'm just going. I found a good place. I said, I'm going to sit down. And I suspect they drove this deer up to me, but I was sitting on a log, on the ground, leaned against the log, and I happened to look back, and there was this nice buck standing right behind me, 22 steps. And I eased around, got around, laid down, went around it, got behind a bush, and I came up. and I shot the deer,
Uh-huh.
and he weighed field dressed 188 pounds.
My goodness gracious.
At 10-pointer.
Wow.
And that was the first one killed in Webster County.
First one. That is, well, Tim Dugan is the man
Yeah.
that told me about that, and said to be sure and ask you.
I'm going to say something that some people's not going to like it, but I offered it to the Webster County Historical Society to go up in their deal.
Yeah.
The head.
Oh yeah.
had it
You
in-
still have the head.
No, I don't anymore.
You don't anymore. Okay.
I was going to donate it to them.
Uh-huh.
I thought it'd be good for
Yeah.
Webster
Yeah.
County.
Yeah.
And they said, well, nah. Well, maybe we can put it in the basement.
Oh.
And I thought, nah. So I called the Conservation
Yeah.
Nature Center,
Springfield.
and she said, oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd
Yes.
take it down here.
If I
Well,
had
that's
it,
great.
If I had it back, anyway. the
That's
idea
great.
is
No, that's a good spot for
it's
it.
in the lobby of their.
Is that
now
right?
It's hanging up there. If you go in and if the backboard's shaped like an arrowhead,
Yes.
that's it.
That's awesome.
And so she said, the director, I forget what her name was, but anyway, she said, I told her something about I was wood carver.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, what are you carving? I said, oh, birds and Santa Clauses and stuff. She said, they have a training deal that they have things come in as training things. She said, would you like to come in and have a one-man show in our lobby?
Wow.
I said, yeah. So I really started gathering up. We couldn't take Santa Clauses. It only had to be nature.
Sure.
So we gathered up a bunch of stuff and went up there, and they paid us mileage and furnished our lunch and
Wow.
set up our table
Uh-huh.
and everything, which they did for a lot of different things.
Sure.
But
Mhm.
anyway, they said, you can sell whatever you want to.
Wow. That's good.
And I had my biggest sale ever
Yeah.
that day.
Yeah. How many years ago was that, you reckon?
I don't remember. For
Been a
sure.
while.
Yeah.
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 Well, that's really neat. Yeah, and so you're still doing carving and teaching.
Yes.
You were supposed to bring me a carving too, just to
Oh,
show, and you
I knew
forgot,
there
didn't
was
you? Yeah.
Oh my!
That's okay.
I have them laid out.
Well, we'll bring them back the next time. We'll have you back. Well, tell us a little bit about the carving. How did you get started, and who all you know
Well,
you teach? I know you have some classes.
Leslie was in college,
Uh-huh.
and she was working at a hobby store on Glen Isle called the Hobby Hub.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an older couple that owned it, and they were really working with the Springfield Carving Club.
Mm-hmm.
They stocked their tools and all this stuff. Well, they sold out to a young couple that knew nothing about wood carving. So they told Leslie, you need to go take a carving class. And so anyway, she said, Dad, I don't want to go by myself. And so for Father's Day, she gave me a gouge, a V-tool, and a knife. So we went to the carving the class. It was an 8-week class.
Went together.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really neat.
And Jeff McKeel went with us.
Yeah. Your nephew.
Yeah. And so then I retired in '84, and I heard about the big school, carving school in War Eagle, Arkansas. So I went down the year before at their fall show, and I signed up,
Mm-hmm.
and we went to that school for 22 years.
Wow.
And it got
That's neat.
After about 10 of them, it wasn't school so much; it was just meeting old friends.
Yeah.
And the school would open on Monday, but they opened up the campground for people to come. They had places for 90 campers there, and so they opened it up a week before. We'd be there when they opened the gate the week before,
Uh-huh.
and it just all of our friends lived there, and we'd sit around and whittle and
Yeah.
visit.
Yeah.
Somebody at 4 o'clock, somebody said, well, let's go someplace and eat supper, and there might be 5 carloads of us.
Wow. That's really neat.
Yeah,
That's
just-
great. Yeah.
Yeah,
How long have you still went recently down there?
they quit the school
Oh,
when the people passed away.
Oh, I
The
see.
kids didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
But there was about 20 of us that was going there, transferred to a school in Crete, Nebraska, at Doane College, and put on by the Nebraska Wood Carvers
Mhm.
Association.
Yeah.
And so Irene and I went up there for 6 years. That just
Yeah.
the same people from Marshfield.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was a great summer thing to do. Something to do with your spouse and everything.
Yeah.
That's great.
And just friends. And we
Yeah.
stayed in the dormitory up in Nebraska. We stayed in the dormitory, ate in the cafeteria. But in Arkansas, we stayed in a camper.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So.
Well, I'm anxious to see some of your work. Now, you're still doing some teaching. You said you have a class
Yeah,
on
I have
Saturdays. Two students.
Two. Bill Sims.
Yeah.
Bill Sims. We started out, and we got an 8-week class. He said, "This is too much fun. I don't want to quit." Well, you don't have to. And there's 3 or 4 more, and they kept coming. They kept dropping out. Now that it's just Bill and I, and he's been coming one day a week. When he was working, he came in the evening.
Yeah.
And then he switched to days, and it's been almost 25 years.
Is that right?
It's not a carving class anymore. We just get together.
Yeah.
We've solved a lot of world problems.
Well, he'd be a good one to help you solve. He could.
Yeah.
He's a smart guy and a good friend.
Right now, we're carving a pheasant.
So you work on the same carving?
Yes.
I see.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And then Stacy Lee.
Uh-huh.
Of course, her mother's my first cousin.
Right.
And so she started with me about 4 years ago. She's doing real good.
Good. Yeah.
Of course, she teach school.
Yeah.
So she was coming at 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. And she was waiting till 1, and I was waiting till 1, and I said, "Come on, 10." And so I fixed a sandwich, and we've been doing now for 4 years.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. That's great. Tom, I'll tell you what, it's the hour's about up again, but it's really been a treat to have you on. I just really appreciate it so much. It means a little bit extra that you and my dad grew up together and graduated from high school together, and my mother and your wife were in club together. I mean, a lot of personal family connections that make it even more.
Me and your dad, we used to bat each other pretty bad.
Well, he was pretty good at doing that if he wanted to.
When he was at the bank, I walked away and he said, "Well, Farr, you sure got a lot of white hair." I said, "At least I got hair."
That's right. Yeah. He was a cutter. He liked to cut up. That's for sure. Yeah. I miss him a lot. It's been 4 years now, but going on 5 actually. But anything else? We got about 5 minutes left. Anything you'd like to add, or you think of that we've missed, or you have a few notes there? Anything?
We've covered my notes.
Yeah. Anything else? In your life that you can think of that you're extremely proud of, or that a memory that around Marshfield. Like, I know obviously President Bush coming was a memory for me. I don't know if you were around when President Truman made the whistle stop.
Yeah.
Was you around then?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, I wasn't there. I think I was in the Army.
I think that was 48, and so that you probably were. Yeah, because you went into the Army after. Yeah, probably the fall of 48.
Yeah. I know about. That's when he was running against Wilkie, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I have a friend at Springfield.
No, was it Wilkie or Dewey? Dewey defeats Truman. That was
Yeah.
See, they didn't think he was going to win.
Yeah, right. Anyway, the day after the election was over, and nobody thought Truman would win.
Right.
The day after we had a gentleman walk in the garage. We had a new Chrysler sitting on the floor. He reached his old bib overalls and pulled out his money, counted out. He said, "I picked up my winnings from the election today," and he threw down enough cash and drove off a new Chrysler.
He had actually bet on it.
Yeah.
Of course, there was a lot of that went on in those days.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Probably is now too.
Well, there is. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
That is cool. That's neat.
Yeah.
So. Anything from around school that we didn't touch on the last time? Any stories? I know we talked about the old gym. I was really glad to get your map of the gym, and I've kind of that's all kind of making more sense now how that all was. And then of course I know they built the new gym in '54, and I've got a lot of stuff I'd like to show you. There's a right over there some plans of the new gym when they were going to have their bond proposal, you know.
I was just thinking about when I was in school.
Yeah.
There wasn't that many kids, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had 2 buses. One of them was an old red bus, and it wasn't very big.
Mm-hmm.
And on the back of it, they built a box, and it had screen wire, chicken wire, and then they had flaps down to cover it. There wasn't. I don't remember if there was glass in it or not. But anyway, there was one door, and they put the kids up in there. We
in the back, they put kids in back there.
I rode on a field trip in the 4th grade. We went to Springfield. Went to I don't know if we went to the zoo or not. I know we went to the city jail, and the last stop was a Colonial Baking Company, and we got to go in there and they gave us bread or what,
snack
I don't
cake
know.
or something.
But anyway, us boys, probably 6 or 7 boys in that box on the outside of they put us up in there, closed the door, and latched.
Oh my gosh.
And there was one bench went across the back of the bus.
Yeah.
And that was the best bread I ever ate.
I bet that was a fun trip.
Yeah.
You boys back there by yourself and
yeah,
those kind of stories. I mean, they're just so interesting. How our culture has moved and shifted.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine putting kids in a crate on the back of the school bus?
My God. And no access to back there by yourself.
Yeah.
I guess you could you said they locked the gate, though.
Oh yeah, we couldn't get out.
Couldn't get out.
No.
My goodness. Think about safety and all the things that we have to do today and how it was back then. You know, automobiles. I went to a safety driving school here a couple of weeks ago, and you know, just you think about those automobiles in the 40s and the 50s, and no safety glass, you know, and
you know how the old 30s cars had the hood, then the fenders came out, and the headlights would sit on there. My dad would let Wayne and I sit on the fenders, lock our legs around the headlights.
Yeah.
He'd go to grandma's 2 miles out of town.
Well, we rode in the back of the pickup.
Oh yeah.
You know, with our legs hanging off the tailgate in the 60s.
Yeah.
You know, around town or whatever, with our parents driving. I mean, you know, go to grandma's or whatever, we'll hop in the truck, we'll ride in the back. Yeah, go ahead. And no seat belts, you know.
When I was in high school, I had a 34 Dodge that Dad couldn't sell to anybody, and so I got to kind of take care of it. And we would, after us boys would kind of congregate after being out in the evening or something, maybe about 6, 7 of us, and we'd take that old car and drive down to this pool and jump up on the fender, up on the hood, up on the top, and then we'd step over on the gatehouse and peel off and skinny dip for a while, and then we go back and everybody go home then. One night we were in there and we was coming back out, and this car started coming down, and Noel Thomas forgot I had a cloth top, and he jumped right in the middle of it and
tore it.
Oh yeah, his leg went clear through. I had to get a new top put in.
Of course, your dad's auto dealership probably could put the top on for you.
I put it myself.
Put it on yourself?
Yes.
He'd get it for you probably for little or nothing back then. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
was a pretty regular happening.
Some things never change, you know. When we had the boys, some of my classmates and on earlier, you know, the stories they would tell from the 70s. It's very similar, only different, you know.
Yeah.
Halloween night. Did you ever do anything on Halloween night around town?
Yes. Yeah, we had a man here that vowed that he would be in with his shotgun and nobody's going to turn his over.
Outhouse.
Well, we was watching it, and he went in, and we turned it over with him in it on the door side down.
Oh my gosh! Oh.
So he was trapped.
Turning over the outhouses. Did you light any fires?
Maybe a couple.
There were some bales of hay got lit back. I can remember a time or two. I didn't do them honestly, but
No.
on the Jackson Street or something like that. And
Yeah.
there would always seemed like there was always windows getting shot out around town, which that's kind of a bad deal.
Then every kid in Marshfield had a bar of soap, and they'd come to the square.
Yeah.
And they'd draw everything, all soap up all the windows. And I think one year, some of the merchants up there, Shields and Henry Field and things, would they give a prize who could do things on it.
Yeah.
Well, that went pretty good till one year. Some people showed up with a cake of paraffin. Well, that didn't wash off. And boy, then on they oiled.
Yeah.
That stopped the.
Sure.
Yeah.
Would to put lard on it or something, something like that.
Yeah, but the town, I don't remember us ever going to create trouble. We just came to town, but
yeah. Well, Tom, it's been a pleasure. We're gonna do it again. I'm gonna come over to your house. I want to see your house for one thing, and then maybe we can get out and ride around town, and we'll turn the video on, the phone on, and talk a little bit more about things around town as we drive around. I think it'd be fun. So yeah.
There's things that as we drive around with that,
you can think about.
And the people, we had some interesting people.
Characters. Every town had characters, didn't they?
Yeah.
Still had a few when I was a kid, but I'm sure you.
How many minutes we got?
As long as you want to stay, Logan will let us stay. Yeah, you can stay a little bit.
Where the meat market is now, Lon Turner lived there. Lon Turner was the first fly fisherman in Webster County.
Okay.
Lon Turner had the first motorcycle in Webster County. He had 3 friends that they bought a big Springfield wagon, tarp over it, and box cook shack on the back of it.
Mm-hmm.
They had a boat made that would go underneath it and come chains up, and I saw the boat, and
like a flat bottom John boat or something, or
the hardware store's all made by a blacksmith. And they would load this thing up, and they'd go to Taney County once in the summer to go fishing, and once in the fall to go deer hunting. And
pull it with a car or what?
No, horses.
Oh, you actually use it? We use horses with it.
Yeah. And Lon Turner, one day when I walked in front of his house. We had lived next door to him when I was little, way before school. So I knew him, and I'd stop and talk to him when I was first, second grade. And one day he said, "Oh, you got a wart." I said, "Yeah." He said, "You want me to take it off?" "Oh, yeah." So he always wore a plaid shirt, a little hat, and black leather bow tie. And he reached in his pocket, got a little piece of paper and a pencil about that long. He asked me a whole lot of questions, and he said, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." I don't know where it was, next week or next month or what, but I walked by and he said, "Hey, show me your wart." I didn't have it.
It's gone, yeah.
And I mentioned that at some place, and Pat Thompson, she said, "Oh, no," I mentioned Lon Turner. She said, "Oh, did he ever take warts off of it?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And she said, "Well, every time John got a wart, folks would send him to dance at Turner."
Yeah. Oscar King, remember Oscar King?
Oh, yeah.
He bought warts. And I was a boy, my grandpa Fraker, I had a wart right here on my thumb. And he said, I was picking at it over their house one night. "What are you picking at?" "Oh, I got a wart." "Well, you go see Oscar." So he took me out there, lived out here out west of town. He looked at it, he rubbed it a little bit, said a few things, and reached in his pocket and gave me a quarter. And he just said, "Just kind of keep an eye on that." He said, "It'll be gone in a few days." And sure enough, probably about a week, it got really loose. And I just kind of picked at it, come right off.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fact. And of course, I've heard all those stories before, you know.
Yeah.
But and then supposedly those people can pledge that gift to someone else, like at some point. I don't know. I've heard that they can.
When they had his estate sale, Jim Hiltenberg bought a bunch of his old fishing stuff. This Dan's at Turner.
Yeah.
Everything he said, buy Dan's at this, buy Dan's at that. You know, that was his nickname, Dan's at.
But it was really John, you said? Or Lon?
Lon.
Okay, yeah.
And he had a hardware on the south side of the square.
Okay.
Back then. And he was a good friend of John Thompson's great-grandpa. Bob Fiennes' dad.
Okay, Mr. Fiennes.
And there's another one, and I don't know who that was. I don't remember.
So this was a house that's where I guess they tore it down for the Dairy Princess.
Yeah.
And then the meat store.
Yeah. But he was something else.
Sounds like it. It would sound like just the way he dressed, he was a character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know, there was all the old boys that sat around with their wine bottles or their hard liquor bottles around the Rathbun drug steps later. But then around MFA, you know, there was a place for them to sit in there. And
Dolly Bell was sitting down there one day at the MFA, and somebody come out with a big armload of groceries, and he said, "Look at that going, and all those groceries, and I bet he hadn't got a drop to drink."
Well, Herb Kuhlman's package store, I don't know how they ever got enough money to get any, but I guess they figured out a way sometimes to get some, or somebody buy it for them. I don't know.
Well, yeah.
Really good stuff, man. Good stuff. We'll sit here as long as you want to sit, but maybe you keep thinking and you keep writing and jotting down some things, and down the road we'll get together again. That sound fair?
Yeah.
And then I want to see your wood carvings, and I'll holler at you. Maybe I can come over sometime, and we'll drive around, and because I know driving around there'll be things that'll come to you. And I'll ask you questions too. Who lived there, you know, so forth. And I think that would be really good for history.
Well, see, when I started carrying the mail, nobody had addresses. You had to memorize the houses, so I knew where everybody lived.
They didn't have addresses?
No. They did, but they never used them.
I didn't know that.
Lumberyard would send off their bills. They just, Tom Farr, city.
Yeah, well, you know, come to think of it, I've seen old letters where it might say Route 2, but no box number. Or rural route, or city route, star route, or something. No. Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, see, I had to memorize all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you had to memorize it on your own. The post office didn't pay you till you had the route memorized. That you do it by yourself.
Really?
Yeah, it's free.
Of course, you was making $1.29 an hour. You can't complain.
Not when I was out. Not when I was out walking the right part.
Yeah.
That wasn't.
Man. Yeah. Who were some of the characters you worked with over the years?
Oh, of course, Joe Birchfield got to be postmaster.
Yeah.
And
I like Joe. He was
Charlie
always...
Hyde. That's Sue Ann's dad. And John Foster. They were the two clerks. Jesse Miller was a city character.
You talking about John Foster that I would know?
No,
or his dad. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And there was John Foster, and then John Fiennes Foster.
Yeah.
That was Pat's
brother. That's who I know.
Yeah.
So this was Pat's dad too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He's one taught me how to work mail.
I see.
Yeah. And then
he had to be fairly old by the time you was up there, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean,
he had to retire.
Yeah. But you retired in 84?
Yeah.
You were just
55.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say that.
If you had 30 years service and you
because you started so young.
And so I
boy, you've had a great life.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had nearly 40 years of retirement. That's great.
Yeah. Well, my goal years ago was to be retired as long as I worked, and I'm past that now.
I would say.
Yeah.
I would say, what a great life.
Hat Haley was carrying Route 1, Phil Shook was carrying Route 2, Patty Cantrell was carrying Route 3, Pete Young was carrying Route 4, and then Trantham got on 2, Wittenberg gone in there, Lynn Miner.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Good folks.
Yep.
All right. I guess we better go.
yeah, better go.
Thank you, Tom.
You bet.
Appreciate you.
Okay.
Folks, we'll see you next week. We'll have another good guest for you. Thanks for joining us, and spread the word. Tell people what we're doing. I think it's great for history, and I think some of you can contribute and share stories, and let me know if there's anything you want to add when we have a guest. Appreciate those that did with Tom, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.